Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Punk on a Rock. My name's Kevin. I'm your host, I guess. Um, Tonight's pretty special. We're going to have probably, one of the more established bands from Hawaii, the band leader, Raoul, from Devil Dog, on the show. And we will pull him in here shortly. Actually, let's go ahead and do it now. Let's see. Let's get him in here. Raoul?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay.
All right, let me see if I can get myself in here too. Nope, nope. I've been having so much trouble with this thing. Let's see. There we go. All right, now we're both in. So how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Today
Cool.
was a little,
So,
well, I got to go to work, but it slowed down, in relation to everything else that I'm doing for a few hours today.
Cool.
So right now I'm a little
Well, let's
relaxed, but then I go to work.
And then it's all stressful, right? So let's kind of get started. So how did you end up in Hawaii? Were you raised there, born there? Looks like we're having some issues again. There, can you hear me now? Darn it.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like we're getting some lag. So yeah, let's kind of start at the beginning. So how did you end up in Hawaii? Were you raised there, born there?
No. I lived in, I grew up mostly in Denver, and financial aid and grants and the Department of Education, all that financing for school was such that, for whatever reason, I mean, I could go to college in Hawaii. I mean, it would have been financially easier if I wanted to stay in Denver, but I didn't want to stay in Denver. And Hawaii was like the farthest I could get from Denver. Not that Denver was so bad, but
Right.
Hawaii just sounded really exotic to me when I was 18.
And what year was that about?
80.
1980. So you were arriving in Hawaii. Were you already into punk at that point?
I mean, yeah, but I liked like Elvis Costello and Blondie too, but I liked like the Ramones and Iggy Pop,
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it was like all one big kind of stew, new music kind of stew. But I didn't really distinguish, I guess, so much. Okay, like punk rock, it's harder than Elvis Costello. I didn't make that distinction yet. Maybe I did in a year or two after that.
So when you arrived then, you were kind of into underground music, I guess. How did you get involved in playing in bands?
There was a couple of guys at Hawaii Loa, which became Hawaii Pacific University. And we were just kind of a little bit weird. Maybe not a little bit. We were weirder. We were weirdos in the social context. Hawaii Loa is kind of a small college, or was. And those guys played instruments, and I wrote lyrics. So we wrote songs, and we became a band. That was Battery Club. And I guess those guys left when we graduated, but I had already, I think, started Devil Dog before they left. I mean, they were getting ready to leave Hawaii for Asia or wherever. And so, like, my senior year, I was already starting to connect with some guys and start what became Devil Dog.
And so when you guys started playing, or when either of the bands, I guess, started playing, what was the scene like there? What were the venues, and like what was the crowd like? I guess.
Basically, I like the art students at UH, the high school students from anywhere from that was a bigger part of it, and probably
Mm.
like the biggest, and from my point of view, the clickiest. But again, this is just from my point of view, and that was a long time ago. Were the kids from Kailua in Hawaii Kai.
Uh-huh.
But there was also a lot of kids from like Pearl City and even Waipahu. And then there was
Yeah.
like surfers from the North Shore,
Right.
and some of those guys became SRO. And some people from Kailua became the Sharks, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Um, there was this guy, I don't really see him mentioned so much in any of the new music stuff on Facebook, but
Mhm.
Stuart K, he had a Hawaiian last name that I can't remember the name. I can't remember it. He had a
Mhm.
band called the Rattles.
Okay.
Um, he was like older than high school. Uh, so it was just kind of this mix, and sometimes it always was like 3D and Anna Bananas, UH. There might be a gig. There might be a gig, like I guess in the auditorium in the dining commons,
Mhm.
in that student student building that's right in the middle of UH. It has
Uh,
the cafeteria and the big event hall there. I mean, to me, it seemed
right.
big at the
I
time. Probably not.
remember it was a pretty big hall. I remember seeing Fugazi there, and I think early on, I think who are those guys that did take the skinheads bowling? Camper Van Beethoven. I remember them playing there.
Yeah, we opened for them, and I bumped into a mic stand, and I chipped that guy's tooth, the singer.
No shit. I was at
And
that show. That was probably like, I mean, I was, you know, in seventh grade maybe when that happened, eighth grade maybe. I do remember that show. See, the funny thing is I never remember you guys playing. And my introduction to your band and a lot of those bands from, I guess, the mid to early 80s was the No Place to Play compilation, which I randomly like picked up at Jelly's. I think probably Kathy with a K like handed it to me and said, "Here, listen to this" or whatever. And you had a part in that too, right? I mean, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I know that that's really like the only time capsule as far as releases go that sort of compile the underground scene from Hawaii at that point. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that Norm Winters
Mm-hmm.
and Mari Matsunaga, who worked for Norm,
Mm-hmm.
and Norm kind of was uh, financially and culturally like kind of a bedrock for
Yeah.
a lot of the culture that happened then, a lot of the youth culture
Sure.
that happened.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, he kind of took me under his wing and treated me kind of like a mascot, you
Uh,
know? Like, I don't know, he helped me out in certain ways, like a
yeah.
lot.
And I mean,
And
he was even around. I mean, he still is around. But I mean, when I was younger, there was Jellies, and then of course he started Radio Free Hawaii later on, which was a big deal in Hawaii. He started like a public radio station basically, and now he still runs a record store in Hawaii called Idea Books and Music. Um, but let's talk about the comp for a second before we jump back. So that kind of compiled what was going on, like, and it's an interesting compilation because a good half of it is like bands like Mystery Crash that were more on the new wave kind of side. And then you had like bands like yourselves and SRO, I believe, was on it. Um, So is that kind of like a good portrait of what the scene was like back in the mid '80s? Like, was it a mix of like, the more new wavy and the punk bands? Did they all play together?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean,
Mm,
yeah, they did. Um, I want to say that some of the people involved in that, like some of the self-perceived more punk or more hardcore, might have
mm,
tried to exclude people who or bands that were like less hardcore, but that didn't really like ever work out. Nobody ever really ended up getting excluded. There might have been those kind of feelings between some of
right.
the individuals in the bands, but that didn't really ever add up to much, um, from what I remember. It's oh yeah, the Falls of Clyde. I remember those gigs.
Hmm,
Um,
hmm. And you even mentioned in your book, which we'll talk about later, Church of the Crossroads, because I remember going to shows there as well. It was just funny to see it like in written form and in like a novel. um, but I remember going to see like SRO and things like that, and Luau guys and a few other bands like that at Church of the Crossroads. Um, was that a pretty prominent venue at the time as well?
it was. I mean, for a little while.
Mm,
For a little while, there were. I mean, it was like kind of like I don't ever remember anything being like regular.
mm,
I think the most regular that I can remember was um, 3D, but even
mm,
then there was no like, okay, Thursday and Friday night we're gonna have live gigs. It just
right.
happened when it happened, and but I guess there was a certain point in time where, like, for a few months or a year, there were there was a gig at Church of the Crossroads once or twice a month.
Mm.
I I
And they
was
were
trying
like
to
a
think of what that place was because I was trying to think of what the venues were, but I remembered like playing there, but I couldn't remember what it was called or
uh, it was like a Unitarian church or something, right? Like right near UH.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm getting like a mental picture of kind of where it was. It was like um, towards Diamond Head from the UH, but like less than half a mile.
Right.
Like
It was like right before the overpass,
yeah,
that you could walk across, right, to get to UH. Yeah. Um, all right. So let's get back to Devil Dog then. So, um, you guys started playing. Were you pretty well received? I've heard of stage antics, but how was the band perceived amongst, I don't know, I guess the rest of the people going to shows and whatnot?
well, I mean, when I mentioned cliquishness, and even though I want to say like I had a thick skin back then, I was younger, and so it's not as thick as it is now.
Hmm.
So it was like with Battery Club, like there was almost ever never any response, except sometimes we would play a gig where some people would go, yeah, cool. But certain
Hmm.
individuals would come up to me like at UH or just wherever in Honolulu and say, like, I really dig that song, man. You guys are, or some of the art students at the university, like the same thing. Or
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
Bobos at Manoa Gardens. Like
Ah,
they kind of took me on as an icon mascot like right away. So there
that's
were like
awesome.
certain other subcultures, but the punk thing, punk rockdom, it wasn't until like because anyway, like for instance, the Sharks and SRO would play, and Devil Dog would play gigs with them, and like nobody would thrash to Devil Dog,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
um, it was like then there was a certain point where the guys in SRO started wearing Devil Dog T-shirts, and right
Ah,
at that same point,
everybody found out it was okay to like dance
Yeah,
to
to
get.
trap from each other. So it was like kind of like that, you know. It
Yeah.
was kind of like that.
Huh. And so
But
you guys recorded 2 demos. How did that come about? And I mean, was there any sort of intention to like release them in a more national kind of way, or like
it was
Did
kind of like there were basically 2 incarnations of Devil Dog,
mm,
and maybe there was like 3. There was like kind of a crossover where there was this one guitarist, Julian. After Brian and Wendell and those guys were communists, and
just like in
then
the book?
yeah, and then those guys quit, and I found Keith, and then I found Julian, and I don't know what Julian's deal was, but after a while he was like, I don't want to play guitar with you guys no more, and I think it might have had to do with maybe like we were becoming. We always had kind of a hard persona, but when we started getting an audience, we actually lived up to that harder persona, which is all bullshit. No,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's bullshit or not, because I got in some brawls,
Right.
a little
Well,
bit.
let's talk about that, because people have talked about like the stage show for Devil Dog. A lot of things about like blowing fire out of your mouth and stuff like that. Like, was the intention to like I don't was the intention to be like an art project, or were you serious about being like just an obnoxious punk band?
Oh God, I don't know. I didn't really like. I just kind of thought that was how it was done.
Yeah.
I didn't really. It was like kind of like, all right. At some point in all of this, I went back to Denver,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know in relation to the whole arc of where I was with Battery Club and Devil Dog, or when Devil Dog was accepted, or we got to be harder, or I got to be harder, or put on a more violent stage show to be accepted, or to be like a hardcore
Right.
band.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of like uh, I saw Black Flag in Denver
Mm-hmm.
and Rollins, and it was like, I would say that the pits in Honolulu were on the ballpark about the same as like in Denver, maybe sometimes.
Uh-huh.
But to me, it seemed like Denver was all that much more intense. And Rollins, there was a bunch of skinheads, and
Mm-hmm.
Rollins was just like a demon on
Right.
stage.
Right.
And somebody came up on stage, because everyone was coming up on stage and stage diving, and they gave him a card, and he read it, and he goes, and it said, the few, the proud, the skinheads.
Mm-hmm.
And it was obvious that they were like white supremacist skinheads.
Right. Right.
And he like stood up and he goes, "You guys are fags. I'll take on your toughest guy right now." And so, I was like, kind of like, okay, well, that's the benchmark.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the benchmark. I
And so
don't really
did
think
good.
anybody ever got hurt that
Mm,
bad.
right.
Somebody might have like put their knee out or dislocated a elbow or something, but maybe somebody lost a tooth here and there. But I don't remember ever getting hurt that bad. I think it was just when you're 22 or you're 25 or you're 26 and you drink a lot
Yeah.
and you do some drugs,
Yeah.
all that testosterone,
Right. Right.
Mix in a little some drugs and some alcohol. I mean, it feels like the normal thing to do.
And an audience sometimes makes it easier. I mean, like, you know, there is that energy that comes along with playing live, and like you just kind of get amped up. And I mean, so then how long did Double Dog last in Hawaii? And I mean, I know that you ended up doing like a scene report for Maximum Rock and Roll, right? Was it you that wrote that?
I don't remember doing that. So maybe I did that with somebody, or
Yeah, I remember reading it.
oh, you
In
know
the
what it
talk.
might have been? Because I used to edit Scrawling Wall, if you remember what that was.
Yeah.
So I might have
Mhm.
written a column, and somebody from there might have submitted it or something. I dimly remember that now
Okay.
that we're talking about it, but I had forgotten that. So
And
that might have.
did Double Dog then get any sort of like, did anybody try to write you, like, to find out what's going on in Hawaii, like about your
Yeah,
band or anything like that?
Hawaii is so disconnected. I mean, I don't really know ever been anybody from Hawaii, like except for like Cecilio and Capano, to get any kind of national
Well,
profile.
I mean, well, your contemporaries, Cringer moved to San Francisco and kind of became a big deal.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know that they moved
Yeah,
to San Francisco. I didn't know they became a deal.
yeah,
Um,
they were huge. And Lanton passed away about 3 years ago. It was like he had cancer or something. But he had been doing a band called J Church, which was also pretty big as well. But yeah, like they got huge in the Bay Area scene for a while.
um, actually, now that I'm thinking of it, Frank Orrell's band, Poi Dog Pondering,
Yeah,
they,
they're all in Chicago now, which is interesting because I was living there before I moved here to Tennessee, and a friend of mine, Joe Brill, is really close with them, and they still perform every once in a while.
I I lived in Chicago for all of the '90s myself,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
Chicago is pretty close to my heart as it is.
it's a great town.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So how did then Double Dog stop playing, and then what did you kind of do after that point?
Um, I guess Keith Potter must have left the island. He's the guy in the video that I sent you the link to,
Right.
the bass
And
player.
I'll link that video in the comments for people to watch as well.
I don't really remember why Don Upton left. It was kind of weird. The drummer of the last incarnation or any incarnation of Double Dog was always kind of the furthest personality in orbit.
Mm-hmm.
It's always
Mm-hmm.
like the guitar, the bass player, and me always like had this this we're kind of like this bedrock. But the drummer
Sure.
was like always more than a pinch hitter, but not as integral
Right.
socially with us for whatever reason. But it was like kind of like we used to all wake up at Keith's house and crash there and wake up, and Keith would always have like 40 ounces of Old English 800 in his
Ugh.
fridge. And that was like
Yeah.
kind of like how we started the morning when we crashed at Keith's. But it was
Uh,
like, it was more communal than that. And then I had a band after, you know, it might have been, I think Keith might have left the island, and I think Don, and they both might have just gotten fed up with me. Because I, I drank like, but Keith drank a lot too.
hmm.
But maybe I think that like a relationship ended, and she was a pretty intense character,
Hmm.
and like I didn't take that well, so I started drinking like a lot more, and I think they were kind of like, dude, you're scaring us. And I don't know if that, I don't remember precisely when and how we ended, how Devil
Okay.
Dog ended. But I wasn't like, it was kind of like, if I remember, it was like kind of like, well, it's just time to end. Okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
It was like there was never any hard feelings, and it might have been that Don left the island. I think he did leave the island. I'm not. I don't. I'll probably remember in a couple weeks.
Yeah. So how long then did you stay in Hawaii after the band broke up? You said you started another band.
Yeah, probably Devil Dog broke up in like '86,
Mm.
and then maybe '86, '87, and then I kind of just jumped right into starting another band. I
Mm.
knew guys, just you kind of got a rep, and people will start a band with you. So
Right.
started a band with basically one guy, Mike Pearson, and fell in with a few other guys and the Beasts. And I guess the Beasts played for a couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was like kind of like I kind of decided I just didn't want to stay in Hawaii anymore because it was like, it's Oahu's only so big, and it's just like,
Right.
well, it'd be nice to go someplace where I could drive to the next city.
Well, I think it's like that for like everybody that sort of grew up there. Like you spend your entire childhood like wanting to leave, and then when you do, like all you really want to do is go back. Um, so you move back to Denver then after you left Hawaii?
No, I did for a little while, and then I ended up in Chicago. It didn't take me long to end up in Chicago.
Mm.
But I remember like I hit Denver, and it was kind of like, all right, I'm 30. I don't want to sing punk rock anymore
Mm.
because I was convinced that 30 was too old for me to take myself seriously as a punk rock singer.
Sure.
But Iggy Pop's like 70, and I wanted to make film
Right.
anyway. I mean, I had always
Mm.
kind of done that some, and I kind of wanted
Mm.
to focus on that more. And you
So
can see how
then,
well that worked out for me.
so you started making film in Chicago. Was it more like sort of like art housey kind of like personal projects, or was it like big budgety kind of things?
It was kind of what I ended up making was sexploitation that was kind of arty around the edges, maybe. But what happened was is that because I really thought that I could kick the door into, I could sneak in the back door of Hollywood that way if I made something that got like a lot of festival heat.
Sure.
And I had no clue that that would be impossible or near
Mm.
impossible. Or I think maybe I knew, but I just didn't care.
Mm.
Um, and I didn't really want to go to LA because LA's like scares me.
You're right.
The thought of living there.
Yeah.
So I thought I'll go get some cred in Chicago, and then I'll move to LA if it works out. And so, but then like I got locked up, right? And
Okay.
then I get, I'm in a halfway house, right? And the guys are watching TV in the rec room, and
Hmm.
there was this cable show called Spartacus, and
Okay.
it was like full frontal nudity. Like even this actor's like pubic triangle was showing, like on
Sure.
cable television. And I'm like, oh, and this is I guess like maybe in 2006 or 2007, because I
Hmm.
went through a lot of years where it was just like I was wasted, and then I
Right.
went to
Right.
prison. And then so I'm just starting to reintegrate into society, and then I see Spartacus, cable TV, full frontal nudity, um, like not even just topless, like full frontal nudity, prime time, and I'm like, oh, the whole sexploitation idea, that was a bad idea.
Right.
But whatever. I mean, like
Well, okay, let's talk about it. So you got locked up in Chicago. Like,
I got locked up in Denver. When I moved, I crashed in Chicago. So I bounced to Denver, and I kind of lived a life of petty crime.
Sure.
And pretty heavy addiction for 3 years. I didn't really shoot because the people that were like I was running with, they wouldn't let me shoot because I was the straight looking one that would go and like it made it easier for us to shoplift. And so I lived like that for a few years, and then I got locked up. So I didn't get locked up in Chicago. I got locked up in Colorado.
Okay, so it had nothing to do with the films you were making. It was just regular old.
No. Yeah, the films I was, you know, I just, I mean, I was pulling some financial moves that weren't exactly legal. I don't really want to go too into that.
Sure.
Well, but I don't think it was that big of a deal.
Right.
But that ended up, I crashed with that. I crashed. Like I thought I had that all together and fell apart in like 4 days. And I fell apart in 4 days.
Yeah.
And so I went to Denver, and then, I mean, I've been sober for years and years now. And, you know, it's hard to talk about this in that kind of venue because some of those people are dead, and that's like kind of a big deal, but it's not. That's not why I don't want to talk about it. But I don't want to like implicate myself. And not that I think there are any prosecutors anywhere, or the stuff that I did was so big time that it would get me into more trouble now. But it's just probably I think it's a better principle not to talk about the exact things and people that I was involved with.
But let's talk about right. And so then you ended up going to prison, and at that point you decide to write a book about your experiences in the punk rock scene in Hawaii, called Hawaii Punk. So there is a disclaimer at the beginning of the book that basically says, you know, the names and places have been changed to protect the innocent or whatever. But it seems to me, at least, you know, the venues are there, and the story seems about right. Like, how much of it was actually, you know, your story? Was it all your story?
Okay, so say you take On the Road by Kerouac, and I don't want to compare the literary significance of Hawaii Punk to On the Road, because I mean there is no comparison. But in terms of On the Road being a thinly veiled memoir and Hawaii Punk being a thinly veiled memoir, like I fictionalized it just enough for it to be considered fiction.
Right.
And there, I have my regrets about that book, and I'll say that right here and now.
What are they?
That, you know, some of the people that I based the characters on in that book, that I should have just fictionalized it more, and so that I could really feel like I kept my mouth shut.
Right.
About, you know, but it's just like, you know, I've tried to make amends for that. But what I found in making amends for that was that people don't want amends. But actually, like, some people like didn't need amends. They were like, "Oh, I didn't even know. I didn't even regret." And then, but some people were like, "Oh, why are you even talking to me?"
Yeah.
You know. So.
So when you decided to write it, what was your what did you want the outcome of it to be? What propelled you to write it? What made you feel like you needed to put it in words?
So, okay, like when you're locked up, you're probably going to end up, I mean, I'm probably going to end up writing because it's the easiest thing to spend time doing creatively, you know?
Yeah.
So that was part of it. Another part of it was like, I never, I didn't get over a woman who I was in love with
Hmm.
until after I wrote that book. So I didn't really set out for that to be the purpose of writing the book, but maybe subconsciously that had something to do with it because I realized that
Hmm.
after I finished the book that I was over her, and it took a long
Yeah.
time. It took a long time. It took like way longer than it should have.
Right.
Um,
Well, I think for most people, from Hawaii now who would read the book, like I think they would find it outside of the story itself, they find it as more of a time capsule of a period that, sort of came and went really quickly in Hawaii. Because like I told you before, I started going to shows in probably like 86, 87, I guess. And by that time, the 3D was gone for sure. Most of the shows were at the back door, a few at random places. Um, and most of the bands, from those earlier periods were gone too. So I think, and I've talked to a few people about this, and most didn't even know that your book existed. And it's like, wow, like I had no idea that any of this was going on in Hawaii, like back in the 80s. And even prior to that, like there was just so much going on. Like, do you feel like you helped establish like some sort of like, I guess, recognition for like there being like an underground music scene in Hawaii at all? I mean, have you ever thought about it that way at all?
you know, I think that I was definitely part of the scene, but the scene's a lot bigger than me, or the scene was a
Right.
lot bigger than me. I mean, the scene would have done fine without me.
Yeah, but I mean, you like sat down to write about it, and like nobody's really done that yet, like, and I think especially for a lot of the younger people, like they had no idea, like, anything even went on in Hawaii, like as far as underground music at all. Um, so like, you know, I think it does sort of act as a time capsule in that way. Like, um, and then you have like things like the Hawaii Punk Museum as well, which we can get into later, I guess. But I mean, so tell me about the book. So you wrote it. Did you self-publish it? How did that?
No, it was a guy in Battery Club published it.
Okay.
Um, he started a publishing house, and we got in touch like after I discharged from prison,
Hmm.
and he was kind of like, "Well, help me with this publishing house," because I guess he had written a novel and he'd written something else that was nonfiction. He's a really interesting cat,
Hmm.
um, but I won't go into that. Um, but he was like, "I want you to blog to promote the publishing house,"
Hmm.
and it just so happens that I took HTML in prison.
Hmm.
I mean, I just found this book and read it, um,
Yeah.
and even I guess that would have been like 2009. Even back then, the HTML was kind of like outmoded. I mean, even though
Yeah.
you still do use it,
Hmm.
um, but it kind of helped with the blogging because I could put some more bells and whistles.
Sure.
Uh, so, I mean, like I said, he was in my first punk rock band. So
Right.
he had more interest in the work. So he was
Mhm.
like, hell yeah, I'll publish this. So that was just kind of like serendipity or synchronicity, one or the other. And he published it.
Jim Cribley says that Keith Potter and Don Upton moved to San Francisco around the same time in the early 90s. I'm reading the comments.
Oh, okay.
Um, so did anything become of the book? Did you get any sort of notoriety for it? Did it get any sort of review?
Okay, so we ended up printing 100, and everything that we didn't send off to get reviewed
Mhm.
sold. I think I have one copy left. And then it's just like kind of like I didn't want to print anymore because it's just like the hustling that you got to do just to sell 50 books.
Sure.
And like more than half of them sold out of jellies. Um,
Hmm.
uh, so I didn't really, I might have shopped it out to 2 or 3 publishers.
Mhm.
And you know what happens with that? They send you the manuscript doesn't, we can't really use it. You get a letter back that
Right.
says that. So I had one review. I got reviewed 7 times out of sending out of the amount that we sent out to get reviewed. That was
Mhm.
huge because we got like more than half of the copies we sent out to get reviewed got reviewed.
Right.
But I think it was like kind of where we sent them out to get reviewed. Places that would have an interest, like freaking Honolulu Star Advertiser, for instance.
Uh,
Got a big write up in the Star Advertiser. The guy in one of the weekly Slick or monthly Slick Hawaii magazines gave it the worst review it got. Every other review was kind of mixed. And then it got one really good review. So it was completely balanced in terms of like the critical response. You
that's
know?
crazy. You only printed 100 copies. It's
Yeah.
crazy that I even have a copy. Mine came from Texas. I got it from some guy in Texas, um, and it's autographed. Did you autograph all of them?
I autographed a lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of them.
Um,
I think if I knew one sold or if it sold through any of our channels,
mm,
and what it was, I think he might have got one of the ones that was print on demand. So that's
okay.
why it came from Texas, because maybe
Uh,
I dimly remember that. But then there were also ones that we had printed, so maybe more than 100 sold, but not many more than 100 sold.
interesting. So what was your path sort of after the book and after getting out of prison? Did you get back into making art or?
Um, so after I got out of the second halfway house, so I got out of prison once, and then I violated parole. I was thinking about it. I didn't really make a grievous
Mm,
violation. I just didn't report because
sure.
I was drinking and getting high again. And
Right.
then, but when they caught up with me, they sent me back to prison for another year. But I will mention that I did get sober. Like had a warrant out for 3 months, and I did get sober for the last month of that. And then the second time I got locked up, I got sober. And then I got out of prison the second time. And then after you get out of prison, you have to go to a halfway house, or I did.
Right.
A lot
Right.
of convicts do. And then so after I got out of that halfway house, I was like, I want to make a movie again. And then the point when I told you, yeah, well, sexploitation isn't going to get me anywhere. But I was like, I
Right.
just need to make a movie because I'm a filmmaker and filmmakers make movies. So I bought a camera, wrote a script, went around Denver looking for actors, and I kind of, oh God, I like somehow talked a certain company where most of the actors came out of, and I'm drawing a blank what that company. They don't exist anymore anyway. but
Mhm.
I became pretty good friends with a few of them. I still am, like, on Facebook. So I made the first film, and then since then I've made films. I probably made like 8 or 9 since then. The one I made just made is 22 minutes. The first one I made was almost an hour.
Mhm.
There were a couple that were just like 2 or 3 minutes, but I made 8 or 9 films.
Were they all like self-released sort of
Yeah,
projects?
it's so. I mean, a no budget filmmaker, I haven't really figured out what the successful hustle is.
Right.
You know, when I was
Yeah.
making films in Chicago in the 90s, it was kind of like I fell in with some cats who made a pretty successful film festival, the Chicago Underground Film Festival. In
Yeah.
fact, like, I pretty much founded that festival with this other guy, and I don't get any like recognition for that, which is fine. I don't care, because
Right.
I'd much rather be able to say, like, I'm a filmmaker
Sure.
than, oh, I founded this film festival. I mean,
Uh-huh.
not that one matters more than another, but to me, I don't need the recognition for founding a film festival. If they want to take that, they can take it. I don't care. I wish them
Right.
all the luck in the world, and then that film festival is, last I heard, was still going strong.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it is.
but it's like, it's kind of a trip because, okay, like, I won an award there. This other guy won an award there. That guy's like teaching film at Colorado University at CU Boulder now.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people who direct theater, who direct film, who I don't know if Al Shabi, I forget his first name, Usama Al Shabi. I don't know if he's tenured or not, but everybody
Mhm.
else I know who does that, like, who teaches
Mhm.
and does theater or does film or does art, they become adjunct professors. It's
Yeah.
just like, okay, now I work at a drug rehab.
Mhm.
Before that, for years, I delivered pizza.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's all about timing and circumstance. I mean, I'm the same way. I went to UH for art as well. And I mean, I'm a graphic designer full time. But I mean, I know people who have climbed that ladder, like it's not something that I've ever personally wanted to do. Like I never saw myself wanting to be a rock star graphic designer like a lot of, people that I know have become. I enjoyed doing the work, and the work itself was good enough for me. Like I never
well,
needed like the big salary or the, recognition for it as much.
here's the thing, though. Being an adjunct professor isn't any more advantageous, except you might be at a place where you can collaborate with students or other.
Right. Yeah.
That might be, but I can build that human network myself by just going out and knocking on doors.
Right.
Then delivering pizza. You make
Mhm.
as much money delivering pizza.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
and you don't get any benefits from being an
Right.
adjunct professor.
Right.
Um, and in terms of being a creative for hire,
Mhm.
I did some video production in the 90s. I worked for other guys who had their own, like, shops,
Right.
but I don't want to have my own shop, because then I do
Then
it
you're the
7 days
boss.
a week.
Then
And
you're
when
the
it's,
boss, and you're not actually making anything. You're just overseeing, right? Like, that's the way I've always felt about it. Is that I can art direct, sure, and I enjoy art directing, but I mean, I don't need to have my own agency to do that. Like I can do it on a per project basis, and that's totally fine for me.
so if I do like a 30-hour money work, and a 30-hour make movies, and know that I'm going to lose money on it,
Hmm.
that's fine, because it's just like, what I make is completely uncompromised.
Right. Right.
It's completely uncompromised. And, some people might say my work sucks, and some people might, like, get a kick out of my work. And, like, I had a really big thing about that for years.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I made this 2 movies ago, won a first place award in a festival in Detroit. And then there's this place in Denver that screens my work regularly. And
Mm.
then so I got invited to their festival and I screened at their festival. And then there's all these guys from the Colorado Film School, and they were like 21, 22, and they were asking me all these like film school questions, like
Right.
theme and visualization and motif, and I'm like, oh, hey man, it's just I try to say it as diplomatically as possible, and I'm like, oh, it's a movie about a bouncing purple puppet and a guy with the chicken mask on his head telling jokes. I mean, it's not. There is no deeper meaning.
Right.
Anyway.
So is there any place then that people could see some of the films you've been making recently, or?
I put a website together because I have 3 YouTube channels, one of which I can't even get to anymore. If I search the name, because like that email account got hacked. But if I search that email address, I can get to those films. So I have 3 YouTube channels and a Vimeo channel, and on this site called dayglowflix.org
Okay.
is where I kind of like embedded what I thought to be my most relevant movies were.
Cool. And we'll link to that in the comments as well. So I know people are going to be annoyed if I don't go back to the Hawaii punk scene, because that's what this is all supposed to be about. So what, if you had to think back on it now, you know, having lived your life, having written a book about it, you know, what do you think the Hawaii punk rock scene had to offer that, you know, no one else had? Like, what made it unique and what made it, like, you know, special to you? Or is it even still special to you?
You know, I don't know. I mean, it is special just because of the individuals, because you form relationships with individuals that you can't. I mean, if you would have been somewhere else, you would have had different relationships. But the relationships that you have with the individuals that I had with the individuals in Hawaii, like, oh God, I hadn't seen that video for a real long time that I sent you the link. I posted it because we were going to do this interview. And I didn't even have it until like a year ago. I went and saw Robert Scott. Some of you who might know who he is. Right. He had it in LA, and I said, I'll digitize that. And so he gave it. No, I had an old VHS copy, which I couldn't even watch because I don't even know. So anyway, so I was watching that on my computer, and I said, I'm going to post this so I could. And then I saw Keith's face, and he's dead. And it's just like, you know, I mean, I guess that's, you know, I don't know what that is. But I mean, the first and foremost thing that comes to mind of like what's different, the people. I mean, I guess there were certain things about the scene in Hawaii that, I mean, you know, just, you know, SRO, the Morps are coming out tonight, the songs, or some of the artwork on the cassette jackets or the flyers. I think that maybe, you know, for a while I thought that was really a unique thing about the scene in Honolulu, was that for a long time when Agent Orange would come to 3Ds, like, because they do surf inspired.
Yeah, they would come every year for the surf season. Like I've probably seen them more than any band in my life.
But it was just like, because of that, Agent Orange was huge.
Right.
And you know, for a long time, years and years later, I would be on my phone and YouTube, oh, Agent Orange, Miser Lou. You know, it's a cool song. It's a really cool song. So, I mean, in my mind, you know, some of the SRO songs, or you know, maybe a couple of the Sharks songs, you know, will always, the Monks are coming out. You know, when I think of the soundtrack to those years of my life, those will be definitely on the top 10. But it's kind of weird that Agent Orange kind of snuck in there too. And those guys are from Bay Area, I think. Are they?
They're from LA.
Are they?
Yeah. Yeah, they
Okay.
were from the LA area, yeah. Huntington Beach, I think. I just saw them last year actually. And we talked about Hawaii. It was crazy.
Yeah, that
So I
makes
guess
sense.
so I guess then that brings us to our last question because I usually ask this at the end of the interviews. We're at about an hour, so yeah. What I normally ask this. So what is the one record that you go back and listen to and say, yeah, like that was the shit. Like that's what made punk rock for me. Like that really nailed it. Like what's that record for you?
Oh, I can think of songs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Alone Again or by the Damned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, TV Party, Black Flag.
Yeah.
What what's the Germs album with the blue circle on it? I can't remember the name of it.
Why am I blinking right now? They only had one.
It's
Um,
not, 'cause the movie was called. I mean, it might be just the Germs.
It's called Lux Con Devil. Isn't that it?
Yeah, that's what it. Okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a great record. Awesome record.
But it's kind of weird. Like I don't listen to that much punk rock anymore. Most of my music I get on like YouTube. I mean, I
Sure.
do listen to
Uh-huh.
the Germs and Black Flag the other day for a little while.
Uh-huh.
But when I was listening to more like contemporary music, I was listening to trance and contemporary like jazz, like not
Mhm.
easy jazz or um, whatever you call it.
Okay, contemporary. Yeah.
Yeah, like harder jazz, not smooth jazz.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Although I do kind of have a sick fascination with smooth jazz, but I can listen to that for like about 10 minutes before I go like, ah, that's enough.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
little bit of novelty to Kenny G and I don't know
yeah,
what it is. Yeah. Well, cool,
like
man. Like,
when you
huh?
listen to the Carpenters or something.
Right, exactly. It's exactly the same thing. Well, awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you. My
it
pleasure.
took us a while to get it like organized, but I'm glad we did. And stay safe out there, man.
All right, you too.
All right, take care.
Mahalo.
Mhm.